Let us begin with a counterintuitive premise that the self-help industry has deliberately buried. Failure is not a stepping stone to success, it is the raw material of it. The metaphor is wrong. It is not a stone you step on, it is a vein of ore you must mine, smelt, and forge. The mainstream narrative tells you to embrace failure with a smile, as if it were a minor inconvenience. This is toxic positivity. Real failure, the kind that costs you money, reputation, and sleep, is a brutal, humiliating, and deeply disorienting experience. It triggers a cascade of neurochemical events. Cortisol spikes, dopamine plummets, and your amygdala hijacks your prefrontal cortex. You feel shame, not because you're weak, but because your brain is wired to interpret social and professional rejection as a survival threat. In the ancestral environment, exclusion from the tribe meant death. Today, that same ancient circuitry fires when you were fired, when your startup collapses, or when your book is rejected for the 15th time. The feeling is not a sign that you are broken, it is a sign that you are human. But here is the dark truth that no one tells you. Failure is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of the real story. The story you tell yourself about the failure, the narrative you construct in its aftermath, is infinitely more important than the failure itself. The event is neutral, the meaning is where the power lies. Now, let us dissect the neurobiology of the failure hangover. When you experience a significant setback, your brain undergoes a process called rumination. This is not a moral failing. It is a neurological attempt to understand and prevent future threats. You replay the event obsessively, searching for the moment you made the wrong decision. This is your brain's way of updating its predictive models. However, rumination has a dark twin, catastrophizing. If you do not intervene, your brain will spiral into a worst-case scenario loop, imagining that this failure defines your entire future. This is the cognitive distortion known as overgeneralization. You do not just fail at a project, you become a failure. The identity shift is the real damage. The external event is temporary. The internal label is permanent unless you actively reframe it. The most successful individuals are not those who fail less, they are those who are ruthlessly efficient at shutting down the catastrophic narrative within 48 hours. They allow themselves to feel the shame, the anger, the grief, but they impose a strict deadline on the pity party. After that, they switch from the question, "Why did this happen to me?" to "What specific data does this event contain that I can use?" This is not a technique, it is a discipline, and it must be practiced consciously. Let us meet a character you have not encountered before, Oliver. Oliver was a 37-year-old biotech entrepreneur in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He had raised $12 million in Series A funding for a startup developing a novel cancer diagnostic. He had a brilliant team, a state-of-the-art lab, and the backing of a prestigious venture capital firm. He was on the cover of a biotech journal. He was a rising star. Then, the clinical trial failed. Not partially, but spectacularly. The diagnostic produced a 40% false positive rate, worse than the existing standard. The data was irrefutable. The investors pulled their funding. Within 90 days, the company was dissolved. Oliver was not just unemployed, he was publicly humiliated. His name was associated with a high-profile failure in a field where reputation is everything. He retreated to his apartment in Somerville, closed the blinds, and spent 3 weeks in a state of deep depression. He stopped answering calls from his former colleagues. He stopped showering. He stopped eating properly. He was not just grieving the loss of his company, he was grieving the loss of his identity as a successful founder. He had defined himself by his achievements, and without them, he felt like a ghost. What Oliver experienced was a classic identity collapse. His self-concept was monolithic, built solely on the pillar of professional success. When that pillar crumbled, the entire structure of his psyche came down with it. This is the hidden risk of building your identity on external outcomes. The Stoics warned against this 2 millennia ago. You are not your possessions, not your reputation, not your achievements. Oliver had violated this principle. His recovery did not begin with a new business idea. It began with a philosophical reconstruction. He started reading existentialist psychology, not the optimistic kind, but the brutal kind that acknowledges the absurdity of seeking meaning in a chaotic universe. He realized that his failure was not a cosmic punishment, it was just a data point. The universe did not care. The universe was indifferent. This indifference was not cruel, it was liberating. If the universe did not care about his success, then it also did not care about his failure. The weight of the cosmic judgment evaporated. He was free to rebuild, not to prove his worth to others, but because building was simply what he did. This subtle shift from proving to creating was the turning point.
Let us now dissect the hidden data within Oliver's failure. The clinical trial failed, but the data was not useless. In fact, it contained a goldmine of information. The false positives were not random. They were correlated with a specific genetic marker. Oliver's team had accidentally discovered a diagnostic signature for a completely different condition, a rare inflammatory disorder that had no reliable test. This is the great irony of failure. The universe often rewards you not for what you intended to find, but for what you stumbled upon. The most famous examples are the discovery of penicillin, the microwave oven, and the sticky notes. They were all errors. The problem is that most people are so blinded by the shame of the error that they do not look at the data. They want to bury the evidence, not analyze it. Oliver, after his 3-week collapse, finally opened his lab notebook. He spent 3 months obsessively reanalyzing the trial data, looking for patterns that the team had dismissed as noise. He found the correlation. He then used his remaining savings to file a provisional patent. He did not raise money, he did not hire a team. He just sat in his apartment and wrote a paper, which he submitted to a niche journal. It was accepted. Now, let us talk about the psychological concept of post-traumatic growth, or PTG. This is distinct from resilience. Resilience is returning to baseline after a setback. PTG is using the setback as a catalyst to exceed your previous baseline. It is the phenomenon where individuals report increased personal strength, a deeper appreciation for life, and a shift in priorities after significant trauma. Oliver experienced PTG. He realized that his pre-failure self was arrogant, overconfident, and obsessed with optics. He was more concerned with impressing investors than with solving a genuine problem. The failure stripped away his vanity. He became a better scientist, more careful, more skeptical of his own assumptions. He also became a better collaborator. He stopped treating his team as subordinates and started treating them as co-investigators. The failure was not a detour from his path, it was a correction to his trajectory. He had been heading in the wrong direction. The failure forced a U-turn. Without it, he would have continued down a road that was leading to a dead end. But he would have been too successful to notice.
Let us layer on the Stoic perspective of amor fati, the love of one's fate. This is not passive resignation, it is radical acceptance. It means embracing everything that happens, including the failures, as necessary for your evolution. It is the belief that the obstacle is the way. When Oliver finally embraced his failure, he stopped seeing it as an aberration. He saw it as a teacher. The failure had taught him more about the market, about biology, and about his own limitations than a decade of successes could have. Success is a terrible teacher. It makes you arrogant. It blinds you to your weaknesses. Failure, on the other hand, is a brutal, unflinching mirror. It shows you exactly where you are flawed. The question is not whether you will look in the mirror, you will eventually. The question is whether you will look with the intention of learning or with the intention of self-flagellation. Oliver chose to learn. He began a practice of writing a failure log,
a journal where he would document every mistake, no matter how small, and analyze its root cause. This turned his greatest vulnerability into his greatest asset. Let us tell the second half of Oliver's story. 6 years after the failure of his startup, Oliver is not a billionaire. He is not a household name, but he is a tenured professor at a respected research university, leading a lab that has published groundbreaking work on inflammatory disorders. His diagnostic test is now in clinical trials, not the one he originally intended, but the one he discovered accidentally. He is respected by his peers not for his failure, but for his perseverance. He speaks openly about his collapse. He uses it as a teaching tool for his PhD students. He tells them, if you have not failed spectacularly by the age of 30, you are not taking enough risks. A flawless CV is a CV that has never been stress tested. This is a profound insight. Employers and investors are often more impressed by a candidate who has failed and recovered than by one who has never faced adversity. The former has proven resilience, the latter is an unknown quantity. Oliver's failure made him more valuable, not less. He had been forged in fire.
Now, let us address the operational mechanics of failing effectively. Most people fail and then waste years in a state of denial trying to prove that they did not fail. This is a waste of time. The moment you accept the failure, you can begin the autopsy. An autopsy is not a blame game. It is an objective, dispassionate examination of cause and effect. You do not ask who is responsible. You ask, what was the sequence of events? What were the assumptions? Which assumption was wrong? Oliver conducted a meticulous autopsy of his startup. He discovered that his key assumption that the market wanted a cheaper alternative was correct, but his second assumption that he could achieve the necessary accuracy with that technology was fatally wrong. He had overestimated the technology and underestimated the biological complexity. This was a technical error, not a moral one. By identifying it, he avoided repeating it. He also identified a team error. He had surrounded himself with people who agreed with him, not with people who challenged him. He had confused intellectual harmony with intellectual rigor. This was a leadership failure. He corrected it. The failure was a gym for his executive muscles. Let us consider the social dimension of failure. In the US, UK, and Australia, there is a cultural paradox. We admire stories of comeback, but we punish the failed in the moment. The stigma of failure is real. However, the stigma is only as strong as your reaction to it. If you respond to failure with shame, you will be stigmatized. If you respond with transparent, analytical, and forward-looking communication, you disarm the stigma. Oliver, when he finally re-emerged, did not apologize for his failure. He framed it as a learning expedition. He told his network, "We spent $12 million learning what does not work." That is a data set that is incredibly valuable. We are not starting over. We are starting from a much deeper understanding. This reframing changed the narrative. People respected his honesty. A partner from a rival firm reached out and offered him a consulting role. They wanted access to his failure data, the insights he had gained from the crash. He was no longer a pariah. He was a subject matter expert on risk. He had turned his failure into a credential. Now, let us look at the long-term advantage of early failure. Oliver failed at 37. He had a PhD, a network, and savings. He could afford to fail. A 22-year-old who fails has even more runway. The earlier you fail, the cheaper the tuition. The market gives you a grace period in your 20s. It expects you to be inexperienced. But if you have not failed by your 40s, the market will be much less forgiving. Failure is a vaccine. It inoculates you against the fear of future failure. Once you have experienced the worst, the anxiety, the public humiliation, the financial loss, you realize it is survivable. The fear is worse than the event. Oliver is now virtually fearless. He is not reckless,
but he is indifferent to the judgment of others. This indifference is a superpower. It allows him to take calculated risks that his risk-averse peers cannot take. He is not afraid of the next failure. He knows he can survive it. He knows he can learn from it. He knows it will make him stronger. This is the ultimate victory, to have killed the fear of failure by having befriended it. So, here is your final, non-negotiable exercise. Tonight, you will write a letter to your future self about your current greatest fear of failure. You will describe the specific failure you are trying to avoid. Then, you will imagine it happens. You will write down the practical steps you would take to survive it. You will identify the data you would extract from it. You will visualize yourself rising from it, changed but not destroyed. This exercise, called fear setting, is the antidote to paralysis. It forces your brain to confront the monster and realize it is made of shadows. Then, tomorrow, you will take one action toward a goal that genuinely scares you. You will apply for the job you are not qualified for. You will pitch the client you think is out of reach. You will ask the person you were afraid to ask. And if you fail, you will not run. You will pause, breathe, and say, "Thank you for the data. Now, what is the next iteration?" Oliver's failure was not the end of his story. It was the end of his first draft. The second draft was better. Your failure is also a first draft. It is not final. It is not fatal. It is just feedback. The beginning of the real story is not the failure. It is the moment you decide to turn the page. Turn the page. The next chapter is unwritten. Write it with the ink of experience, not the ink of regret.